On today's show,
Well, the reality is that there's a shortage across the board. So,
yeah,
you know, there's a shortage of teachers, and then those that would be appropriate to work in a special school, even more so.
yeah,
But one thing that I will say is that, you know, it takes a special person, a special type of person to work in a school for children with disabilities. And
yeah,
I always believe that it will be better to wait for the right person, so you have the right individuals working with children, than to be desperate and get the wrong people in
yeah,
that, could do a lot of damage.
yeah. Welcome to Education Today. I'm your host, Solanke. I spent 15 years in the secondary classroom teaching English, reading, and social studies. I've also been on the other side as a parent of 3 children who have completed the formal schooling years of kindergarten through 12th grade and are now in the college and career stage. Now I'm here to have conversations with teachers, administrators, school staff, students, and parents about all things education. Join me as I cover current topics in education from preschool through to college, career, and beyond. Welcome to today's show. Our topic today is all about serving students with disabilities in the UK. My guest today is Yvonne Dixon, who has a lot of years of experience in education as well as many other fields. Welcome to the show, Yvonne.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. What is your background in education?
So my background in education is I graduated with a law and history degree, and then I went on to teach history in schools. And with my first teaching job, I worked in a school for children who had short lifespans, a school called Marjorie McClure. And it was there that I got that, first, that knowledge, that understanding of what it was like to work with children with disabilities. And from then on, every role that I've held, I've actually kept that training up. I also worked in a school in Orpington, Derek Wood, which was a school with a deaf unit. So I learned how to teach children who had hearing impairment. And that was, again, another amazing experience. And just as time's gone on, I've just taken a number of courses and continued working with children with disabilities. And then to date, I am now running a school for children with autism.
Oh, autism. Okay. So how many years in education in total?
A lot of years. I've been teaching continuously since I was 23. I'm now 43, so 20 years.
Oh, wow.
It's a long time.
Yeah. I have to go back to what you said earlier when you said that you taught in a school for children with short lifespans. And I'm just thinking about the toll that must take to, to take in students, love students, get to know students, and then they pass away, and that to be a common occurrence. That must be tough.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really tough, but at the same time, it was so rewarding as well, because they're thirst for knowledge and how they treat their teachers and how their parents treat their teachers. It was just an amazing experience. I do believe for your own mental health and well-being, it's not a school to be in forever, because it does, as you say, the difficulty, when you lose a child and you've built that rapport and that relationship, often a child will move on and go elsewhere. But to, constantly use, at the time I lost 3 of my students, and it really did affect me.
Wow.
And so, when I left, I left with such an amazing send-off from all of them, and just fond memories. But, as time's gone on, I've always kept in touch, and it's sad to learn that, some of the students didn't make it.
Oh, yeah, that's tough. But what a privilege to make an impact in their lives, right?
Absolutely, and just their thirst for knowledge, as I said, they really loved my history lessons.
Yeah.
And more than that, I would go and look at them in other lessons as well, because I was trying to teach them in the best way that I can. And I saw them, in other lessons, in swimming lessons, and in a maths lesson, an English lesson, just to pick up on the different techniques that the teachers were using to engage them, so that I could use that in my lessons as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you also mentioned that you'd worked in a deaf school. Did you pick up sign language?
Yeah, I picked it up. I basically, I wasn't great at it. I must say that one of the things that I learned very quickly is that because I'm very expressive with my hands and my facial expressions, although I wasn't very good at sign, I just knew a few things in sign.
Yeah.
The children loved my lessons because they said that I'm so expressive
Yeah.
in the way that I talk. But what it is I had a device around my neck. So these were hearing impaired students, so they were not completely deaf.
Yeah.
And that meant that they could actually follow the lesson.
Oh, okay.
But as I said, the fact that I'm expressive in facial and also with my hand gestures, it helped them as well to follow the lesson.
Yeah. So you said your current school is a school for students with autism, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I work with predominantly the older children who are from ages 14 to ages 18.
Yeah. So how are students placed into your school? What's the criteria?
So there's varying criteria. It's done by a case-by-case basis with the executive head teacher along with the local authority. So there is not one criteria, but to be in the school that I am in, there needs to be, they have to show that they're able to be independent, because the focus of where I work is to try to integrate them within society and for them to have the best quality of life.
Yeah. And what services are provided in your school that they would perhaps not receive in I'll call it a mainstream school?
So first and foremost, one of the major things is that we follow a quality of life curriculum where our focus is not on examinations. We assess in a very different way. So that's the first very, very major thing. We have a student-centered approach where we're thinking constantly about the best way to teach the child. So it's personalized to them. It's not generic. It's not based on groups. It's actually individualized for that student.
Oh.
And then we allow the students to have experiences. So they will go out, they will do swimming, they will go out and learn how to do shopping, learn how to go to a doctor's surgery, learn how to take care of themselves in our makeshift flat. All of these life skills that are so, so important that often we take for granted.
Yeah.
We help them to learn how to communicate and give them, different devices and signs that they can use within the community so that they can look after themselves. And we're very pleased because this year will be our first year where we're going to be moving students on to college.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the curriculum is individualized for each student. So what is the size of the student body and what is the class size like then?
The class sizes are very small. That's very, very important.
Yeah.
With maximum class size is 9.
Oh, good.
We couldn't go any bigger than that.
Yeah.
Within each class, as well as the teacher, there is always teaching assistants to support the learning. And we also have a number of individuals supporting, so that's speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, educational psychologists, parental support advisor, etc., etc. There are a number of adults that are involved in their education.
Yeah. So in the U.S., to teach students with disabilities, I'll say in Florida, you need your bachelor's degree, your teaching certificate, but then you also need like additional certification in teaching students with disabilities. What is the required qualification in the UK?
So in the UK, it's exactly the same.
Hmm.
You would have to complete additional qualifications. There's two main qualifications for our school, which is teach. That's the first one. And the other one is certs, because that's the model that we follow.
Hmm.
And that's actually an American-based system that has been brought over to the United Kingdom.
Oh, okay. What are those things? What is teach and what is certs?
So CERTS is basically a social communication, emotional, you know, model that is used where it focuses on making sure that you're thinking about the student first and ensuring that all of those things are being catered to in order to get the best out of the student. So
Oh,
if their social and their communication and their emotional needs are not being met, then they can't actually manage within the classroom. So you've always got to be thinking about that when you're putting activities together, when you're thinking about trips,
yeah.
etc., etc.
Okay. So like
With regards to,
I'm sorry. I'm
yeah, go
sorry. It's
ahead.
like social emotional learning and the whole focus on the whole
Yeah,
child, right? Oh,
exactly,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then with regards to teach, then that's the model where you're actually learning and understanding about the needs of a child with disabilities. Children with disabilities have a range of needs, and it's important that you understand that it's very different to teaching in mainstream
Yeah.
in terms of how you're going to provide that additional support. All children in our school have an educational healthcare plan, and it's important that you're following that to the letter
Yeah.
and making sure that that child's needs are being met.
Yeah. So in the US we call it an IEP, individualized educational plan. And it's a legal document. So is it the same in the UK where it's like laws
Yes,
that back it up?
absolutely. So, if the educational healthcare plan is exactly the same,
Yeah.
um, you have to follow it because that is the expectation from government, local authority.
Yeah. You mentioned parental support advisor. Is there like a what is there like a requirement for a certain level of parental involvement in the school?
I would say that it's our executive head teacher has invested in ensuring that there is sufficient support, not just for the students, but also the parents who play a big part in supporting our students on a day to day.
Hmm.
There's a lot of needs that parents have,
Yeah.
and they need support with that. It could be something as simple as filling out a form to much more important on when their child is, becoming dysregulated. How do they support? So that particular role is crucial to the way in which we do things, because if you're looking at a child holistically, you cannot disregard the big impact that a parent makes to the learning of that child.
Yeah. Well, that's huge. I spoke to somebody a few days ago. I interviewed somebody who has a child with special needs, and basically she's going through the system by herself. This is in the U.S. Without a parental support advisor. That role sounds like something we need over here. I don't know if it exists over here, but that sounds amazing, actually.
Absolutely, especially because a big part of that is also about mental health and well-being
Yeah.
of our parents and of our students. One of the fantastic things about the borough that I work in, which is Hackney, is that they provide a service where we have somebody from the mental health and well-being team who come along and look at the students, but also support where necessary for any parents who may be struggling with their mental health.
Hmm. In the U.S., there's a push for mainstreaming of students with disabilities. So while we do have schools like the one that you described, the one that you work in, it is very common to see the kind of students that you described in your school being mainstreamed. So, like the high school that I worked at for the past 11 years has like autism classes within the regular student body. I hate to use that word regular, the mainstream student body,
Mhm.
so that they're part of the mainstream school. And there's a push in this country to do that rather than separating them into a separate school or
Mhm.
separate facility. How does this work in the UK? Is it very common to see schools like yours, or are some kids with like autism and other disabilities also mainstreamed into traditional schools?
Yes. So in the UK, it's down to parental choice.
Oh, okay.
There will be examples where it isn't because the needs of the child cannot be met within a mainstream school.
Yeah,
As long as they can, there is no reason why a child needs to go to a separate school.
yeah,
But it's really important that it's about thinking about the child and what's best for the child.
yeah.
Some students with their disabilities can cope in schools with, 1,300, 1,400, 1,500, as
Mm-hmm.
large as a number of these schools can be, whereas others, it would actually do more harm to the child than good.
Yeah,
So I would say it comes down to parental preference. However, that preference is about thinking about the child first,
yeah,
and whether that would be the correct environment, because you can do a lot of damage by sending a child with disabilities into a mainstream school if that is not a suitable place for them to be.
yeah. We just had a case on the news here last 2 weeks where a teacher was shot by a kid with special needs. I don't know the whole situation, but the 6-year-old kid had special needs, and he was to the point where a parent had to sit in the classroom with him. And then the week when
Mhm.
the parents didn't come, the child bought a gun and threatened the student with the gun and actually shot the teacher. And but he sounds like if a parent had to sit with him in the classroom every day, it sounds like perhaps that wasn't the best setting for him. But
Absolutely.
this is what we see happening in the U.S.
Absolutely, because a lot of the time the motivation is money as opposed to what is best for the child.
Yeah,
And if you look at that case and the intricate details of that case, it was very clear that that was not the appropriate setting for that child. And rather than it's going to move the child, it would have come down to two things. It's either going to be the parents and their want for their child to be integrated and to be seen in quotation as normal,
hmm,
which motivated them to keep them the child in a setting that was not appropriate.
yeah,
And two, maybe if those wanting to save money, because it costs a lot more money to send a child to a different provision. But
hmm,
money should not be the factor that motivates. The factor that motivates should always be about what's best for the child.
yeah. So we have a shortage over here in the U.S. of teachers who are certified and want to teach students with disabilities, and aides, also the aides in the classroom. Do you guys face a similar shortage, or do you have an abundance?
Absolutely. Well, the reality is that there's a shortage across the board. So,
Yeah,
you know, there's a shortage of teachers, and then those that would be appropriate to work in a special school, even more so.
yeah,
But one thing that I will say is that, you know, it takes a special person, a special type of person to work in a school for children with disabilities. And
yeah,
I always believe that it would be better to wait for the right person, so you have the right individuals working with children, than to be desperate and get the wrong people in
yeah,
that could do a lot of damage.
yeah, yeah. That's true. It's very true. So you've been in this field for a long time. Um, why do you continue to do it?
Well, first and foremost, my child has ADHD
Hmm.
and ASD. So I feel that for me, this is my calling. This is the school that I was always meant to be in.
Yeah,
If I look at the track of my career, it was always going to head in this direction,
yeah,
but I wasn't motivated, strong enough at the time when I was much younger, just to make that leap, because I worried about, how narrow and finite in a way it is when you move into special school, because once you're in that environment, it's very difficult to move back into mainstream.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, part of that is because you just wouldn't want to, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But, it's taken me a number of years before I made a decision to move directly into special schools, and I haven't regretted it one day. It was the best decision that I ever made in my life to just move over, and that motivates me, because actually my experiences of working in mainstream has meant that I really appreciate how amazing it is to work in a school with children with disabilities,
Yeah.
from the parents, the students, the staff. Like I said, I have so much respect and admiration for everyone around me.
Mm-hmm.
And, from the person that cooks our amazing meals, to the person that takes extra care to clean our buildings. It's just, a school filled with love. And I hope that, other schools are able to emulate that throughout the UK, because, it is such amazing practice that goes on a day-to-day basis at the school that I'm based at.
Mm-hmm. Well, it definitely is a calling. Teaching is a calling in general, but teaching students with disabilities is definitely a calling. We definitely don't want the wrong people doing that. We need the right people doing that. And I believe that you
Exactly.
definitely have a servant's heart to be willing to do this, to work, because it's tough, it's hard, but it is
Yeah,
rewarding at the same time. So I just thank you for your
exactly.
service as a teacher and an administrator.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your experiences with us today.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to find out what we do in the UK.
Yeah, it's good to hear the comparison. It's interesting because I grew up in the UK educational system from like nursery school through to university, but I taught for 15 years in the US system. So for me, it's always interesting to see the comparisons. But thank you so much for taking your time to share your experiences with us today. It's been great having you on the show.
Oh, thank you. You take care.
All right, you too. Thanks. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Education Today. We'll be back next time with more current topics on all things education. In the meantime, you can email any questions or comments you have about the show to edtodaypodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you are listening so we can continue to expand our reach. We are listener supported, so if you're able to make a small monthly donation, you can do so by clicking the Support This Podcast link at the bottom of the show notes. Check out my blog for more about my experiences as a classroom teacher at medium.com/@SOCO. That's medium.com/@SOHKOR. You can also find me on Instagram at SOCO_rights. That's SOHKOR_rights. See you next time, and thank you again for listening.